Hello friends. In this series, using a few simple shapes, a handful of colors, and one or two minor details, I'm not going to show you how to build a thing. I'm going to show you how you can build anything. My name is Jacoby, and this is the joy of building. This series is all about taking inspiration from the real world. A build doesn't have to be mega for it to be magnificent. We're going to start this series with something that you can spend an hour on and be really proud of in your world. If that's all the time you have to play with, we can really make something special. We're going to start off with trying to get the shape right. If we can get the shape right, it's going to take us a long way in really getting the theme of our build across. Once we've got a few ideas laid aside from our inspiration photos, we can hop into a world and see what we can make. If you're ever confused about how to start a build, just start with a box. This box is going to be 15 by 9, but yours can be whatever size you want it to be. Alright, for my box, I'm going to go up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so we're 6 boxes tall, and I'm going to fill in this box all the way around. All we're trying to do here is create a starting point for our build. Okay, now let's make our box a little bit more interesting. Let's add another box to the side here. This one I'm going to come out 3, down 7, and back in 3. And just fill it in. And we're going to do the same thing around the back here, except we're going to make it a little bit different. We're going to come in 3 from the corner, and then round off the edges for this box. That looks good. Okay, now let's talk about how we're going to put this roof on. First thing we need is a dormer. Dormer is that end cap that goes on the edge of a roof. The dormer really sets the shape for your roof. So for me, I want a little bit of a curve on my roof. So what I'm going to do is 1 layer of 1 and then 3 layers of 2, just like that. I'm going to do that same thing over here, and you're going to see me mess up this dormer, but that's okay. We'll come back and fix it. For this blue dormer, it's not going to be quite as tall because it's not quite as wide, but we are going to follow that same pattern of 1, 2, 2. Okay, to lay the roof on, what we're going to do is just outline this dormer with a single block layer all the way around. Just like that, nice and easy. I'm not crazy about these overhangs on either end, so I'm going to knock those down 1 block. There we go. And just pull this out 1 block. So I'm just adding a block to the end so we get a nice little overhang for our roof here. Once we've got this dormer in place, we're just going to do the exact same process on the other 2 dormers. And here you're going to see me fix that problem that I created earlier. And that's okay, sometimes you make mistakes. That's why it's good to practice, right? If you make a mistake, we can fix it at any time. Alright, to complete this roof, all we've got to do now is tie the ends together. Here you can see I'm just bringing it around end to end. Roofs are really not that hard if you go about them in the right way. When we run out of room here on this blue dormer, we're just going to bring the roof all the way across. Okay, now we're going to do the same thing in this corner, just following that same method. And we'll clean up the back as well, just bringing them all the way across. And just like that, we've got a nice simple roof on our house. Okay, so we said we wanted a really big chimney, so I'm going to plop that right here in the corner where these 2 sides meet. We're just going to go up in a little 2x2 pattern, all the way up, and I'm going to throw a couple extra blocks down here at the bottom to remind me to fill that out. For the side here, let's build a little overhang. Let's carry this roof all the way across, come out 1 more, we'll drop down 1 and come out 2 more. Now we have a nice little overhang for our roof, and we'll add some legs to keep it standing. And I like that overhang so much, we're going to add one to the front of the house as well. Just right here where the front door is going to go. You may decide that you don't want this overhang, and that's fine. It's your world, build it how you want. On the back here, what we can do is we can add another dormer atop here, and then we can turn this little edge into a balcony. And that dormer is built the exact same way. This way I'm only going to go up 1 for each layer and pull the roof across, and we got that looking good. And there you go. With just a few simple shapes and just a little bit of time, we've got a really nice looking build started here. Now what we've got to do is start thinking about what kind of colors would we like our build to be. And to figure that out, let's jump back into our inspiration world and see what kind of design ideas we can come up with. Right, so for our colors, what I'm seeing here are a lot of great earth tones. I see lots of colors that are really going to lead us down some nice tans and browns and a little bit of red in these chimneys. So let's focus on these colors: tans, reds, greens, blacks, and browns. And what we'll do is we'll pick one solid color for each one that will represent our base layer, and then we'll go back later and add a couple other colors in some different textures to really kind of fill out this build and add just a little bit of more detail to our coloring pattern. Alright, if you guys are ready, we can hop back into our world here and finally paint our build. Alright, so back in our build world, let's assign a color to each one of our wools that we have. Let's use brown mushroom blocks for the red, pink terracotta for the orange, black terracotta for the green, and green terracotta for the blue. And now all we've got to do is just fill in the colors. This is just going to be our first layer. We're going to add lots of detail to this later, both in how we color it and some of the details we add in part 3. But for now, we can really start to just get a feel for how this build is going to look. I often find that builds kind of grow organically, and you piece them together as you're building them. You get new ideas, new inspirations, and it can really change the direction of your build. And that's one of the great things about being able to kind of have a method for building without being stuck to step-by-step instructions. So I hope that when you build your cottage, you don't follow me exactly, and that you come up with your own design to really kind of represent how you want your world to be. And as you can see, I'm just kind of finishing up filling in some of these colors here. We'll get to the roof here, and then we'll talk about what we're going to do with some more textures. Before we get to those textures, let's take one look at our build here, and yep, we've got a nice flat base layer for our colors. Now we're going to start to add some interesting things to these colors. And we can do that by just picking another block of a different texture, but of a similar color to the ones we just selected. So mud bricks, regular bricks, black stone, and green concrete. I'm going to start with these mud bricks here, and all I'm really doing is just creating little patches of texture throughout the building. Your texture can kind of tell the story of your build if you let it. For me, I'm imagining that this is an old cottage and it was plastered at one time, but a lot of the plaster's kind of peeled off here, and you're getting to see some of the bricks underneath, and some of that plaster is just barely hanging on. For the green here, you might notice that the green concrete doesn't really stick out that much, and that's okay. Your texture doesn't always have to be big and bold. Sometimes it's the little things that add a lot of character and detail to your build. So here I'm just finishing up the bricks on the chimney, and then we're going to move on once again to the roof, where I'm putting on these black stone blocks on the roof. And I really like how it looks like the roof is patchy and spotted in places, because my cottage is going to be deep in the woods where it's kind of fallen apart just a little bit, but it's still got a lot of love and character in the build itself. Alright, so we've got layer 2 on. Now let's do one more layer. Layer 3 is really going to be what sets this build apart, and is doing the same process, just using different textures of similar colors. And for these textures, you can see I'm just kind of lining the edges of where I've already been. I don't want to do too much because I don't want to take off all of our base layer, but these textures can add a nice transition between our flat base layer and some of those more grand textures that we just added in the previous step. All right, here you see me adding a little bit of that moss green, and then we're gonna finish up again with the roof one more time. I like these bricks in the roof. They look like shingles to me. So I've got patches of shingles on my roof. Maybe it's come back and we've had to patch a few parts of this roof as we've gone through. If you can tell a story with the colors, then when we get to the details, we can really lock that story into place. All right, before we move on to the details, we're gonna do one more thing. We're gonna take this dark oak wood, this is stripped dark oak wood, kind of tie our build together and maybe clean up some of the edges where the textures get a little rough. Here you can see I'm using it to kind of tell a story with how this build might be held together. I'm going to put a beam across here to give it some kind of support. Around the side here, I'm going to use these brown beams to kind of blend together the lighter tan and the darker green. I think they make a nice transition line between those two edges. And then up here where our balcony is going to be, I'm going to do the same thing I did on the front. I'm just going to create a little pillar and cross beam just to give some texture support to this overhang here. All right, now let's talk about some details that we can put on our build. We left some space for some nice big windows. We're going to trim out the roof. We're going to cap our chimney, and we're going to add lots of greenery. So the first thing I like to do is trim out the roof. And this is really kind of trial and error. Sometimes you're going to discover that if you've got a lot of different slopes in your roof, you might have to use a mixture of solid planks and plank stairs and plank slabs to get the proper look for your trim around your roof. But once you get a good pattern going, it's easy to just follow the pattern all the way around. And you don't have to do the trim. Some builds I see nowadays leave out the trim entirely. But I'm still kind of old school. I like the trim. I think it provides a nice finished edge to our roof line. So let me just bring that all the way around here. And there we go. That looks pretty good. Now, for the details of the build, what I like to do is just focus on what I think each area of the build is going to be for me. So I know that right here, this is going to be my front door. And you'll notice that I'm not doing anything particularly complicated. I got a couple of hoppers, a couple of dark oak stairs and planks and fences, and then a nice spruce door here. But because we've taken the time to put in all of those extra detailed layers during our shaping and our coloring, we don't have to get too complicated with our details to have it really look nice. Now, we did want a couple big windows, so I left this space open specifically for a big window right here. And what you will discover is that you want to put a couple different kinds of windows on your builds because each window has a different purpose and a different bit of character to it. Now in the corner here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to start adding some greenery in. These shrubberies, I think they do a great job in really kind of tying your build to the rest of the build. So you'll see me come around the edge here, and then I also come up on the roof. And now my roof and my bottom part, despite being vastly different shades of colors, have this nice blending green that ties them all together. Up here, I'm going to finish our balcony with just some simple trap doors and a couple fences. And again, the door is not very complicated, but because we've done all of that work ahead of time, it doesn't have to be. It's layers and layers of detail that we're trying to build here, not all one fell swoop of details all at once. sometimes your details can tell stories about the build. So we put that big chimney on the front of this build, and I think that it would really make sense that we've got a couple logs stored under this overhang to the side here. And so all I'm doing is just laying out a couple of logs, and we'll put some fireplaces down so we can kind of get like maybe some chopped wood look for us. And when we pull back and look at that, it really looks like it belongs in our cottage build. Up here, we're going to add one more window, and the windows don't have to be big to be impactful. This window is just 2 stairs and 2 glass panes, but I think it fits perfectly right there. And then, of course, we'll tie all of this together with just a little bit of greenery that really brings each element together. All right, let's finish up by putting a cap on our chimney here. Couple fireplaces to get some of that smoke. You know, anytime you can introduce any sort of movement into your build, it really gives it a lot of life. And it doesn't have to be much. Just a few subtle puffs of smoke coming out of the chimney really give life to this build. And then once we're done, we can go on the inside here and clean out all of this excess wool. We don't need all of this. And what you'll notice is that we've got a pretty good amount of space in here for all of our chests and beds and crafting tables and everything else that we want to store in our brand new house. And so there you go, guys. In just a few minutes, with just a few simple planning details and a game plan, we've put together, I think, a pretty nice looking build. This is something that you can do in just an hour or 2 hours, and it really will fit nicely in your world. So I hope you had fun, and I hope you enjoyed building with me. Put your cottage builds in the comments below. I would love to see them, and thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.